Ingrid Schroffner, how are you doing today?
I'm okay.
Are you in, where are you right now? Are you in the Boston area?
Yep.
But you've been living in that area for quite a while.
Yeah, I
And
came here and I kind of went in a 4 mile radius.
right. So you're definitely, I don't hear an accent. So you've definitely not got completely native, but you're a lawyer, you're an attorney, you've had some very senior positions. You've also developed an expertise and you're an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, and belonging is the addition to that now.
So Ingrid, you and I went to Punahou School a long time ago in the 1980s. We graduated in 1988. We became friends, I believe, largely because we were in German class together.
And advanced writing.
And advanced writing, yeah. Over those years, I've often thought about you and also, the many other students that I went to Punahou with and kind of thought, I don't know the full story. And so this is really an opportunity to kind of dig a bit deeper into your background, your family history, and just kind of learn a bit more about, maybe things that I neglected to ask you about way back in the 80s. So I'm really happy to be talking to you right now.
So so I came here to Boston College, and when you and I applied for college, and we graduated in 1988 from high school, the bell curve came out. And so Asian people such as myself, who were part white, I'm, as you know, a Hapahali, which means half white or half foreign in Hawaiian language. We were told that we should apply as white if we could. So that's what I did. But then when I got to Boston College, I started getting all this Ahana mail, which is the Asian, Hispanic, African American, like this conglomeration of ethnicities. And I realized, because someone told me that I was Asian, my roommate from Lynn, Massachusetts, didn't understand why I didn't know I was Asian. And I didn't really think of myself that way because in Hawaii, as you know, folks with mixed ancestry, particularly with Asian ancestry, are just part of the norm. That's the norm in Hawaii. And so I didn't really think of myself as anything different. But then at Boston College, I kind of started realizing I wasn't really involved in that sort of thing until I got to law school, when I was part of the Asian student organization. And actually, the president of that student organization was from Hawaii. And he saw me the first day of school and said, "Hey, I think you're from Hawaii." And I said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because the way you walk."
I assume the comment about the way you walk, perhaps it was from years of wearing slippers in Hawaii and a certain gait. But let's go back to the beginning of your family. And why don't we start on your father's side? Your last name is Schroffner. That sounds pretty German. And then I have additional evidence, which is you and I were in German class.
Yes.
Way back in the day. So, jawohl. So my guess is there's a connection there. So please let me know a bit about where your father's side of the family came from.
So my father's family is from Salzburg, and he's a first-generation immigrant. He came to the United States. So he went to medical school. He's a doctor in Austria. He comes from a family of farmers, and he graduated from medical school and didn't want to be told what to practice. And his one other relative on this hemisphere was his cousin Willie, who had been sent to Hawaii to set up the BMW business. And so he thought, well, I've got one. He wanted to go to America, and he had one relative in America. So he thought, oh, I'll go to Hawaii. He took a train to Nice, and then he took a boat to New York, and got on a Greyhound bus and took it across the United States, and then left out of California. And he said he had like $3 left when he got on the plane, but he knew he was going to be fine because he's going to see his cousin, who was like a brother. They were both born in 1939.
But he was probably surrounded by people growing up who had been through pretty horrible experiences. Did he ever talk about that?
A little bit. We when I was in third grade, we saw Dachau when we were visiting relatives, and it was pretty horrible. I had nightmares for at least 3 weeks afterwards. But we also had my Oma with us, and apparently there was a priest in our family who died in Dachau. It's right over the border into Germany, and that's where Salzburg is as far as location.
So your father decided to leave his home of Austria for the U.S. What was there about his personality that made him decide that he would have more independence and autonomy away from where he grew up, and what does that suggest about his motivations and his personality?
I don't know. Is that a leading question? I guess he's kind of an adventurer. I don't know. That strikes me. Well, especially the way he decided to go. He said, "Well, I didn't have a lot of money, so if you didn't have a lot of money, you were going to take a boat."
Let's now start with your mom's side of the family. Who was she? What kind of a family did she come from, and how did they end up in Hawaii?
So my mother is the youngest of six. My grandmother was a picture bride. And those were, for those who don't know what a picture bride is, those are pictures were sent from Okinawa and Japan to immigrants who had gone to Hawaii, so that the men could pick their bride from the pictures. And that way that the daughters could go to America, or, this territory of the United States, and no dowries would need to be paid. So it was a really good way to get rid of daughters without dowries in the rather sexist culture of Japan. And so I'm actually half Okinawan, not Japanese. And there's only a distinction between, only in Hawaii do you ever hear about the distinction, or in Japan versus Okinawa. Japanese can look down on Okinawans as being sort of a little bit possibly tainted, because the Okinawan men can grow full beards and are a little darker. And there's an Okinawan dialect that's not understandable by Japanese people, that my grandparents used to speak when they didn't want their children to understand what they were saying in Japanese. And so my grandfather came in 1920 to work in the sugarcane fields, and he got his first picture bride, who had a blue baby and then died. And so he needed another one. My grandmother actually was born in Maui, oddly enough, but she was born, and she and her sister were born, and then with the third kid, their mother died. And so in those days, when that happened, they would take the girls. If you were a girl and that happened, they would take those girls and they'd send them back to Okinawa so they could become picture brides.
Were you ever conscious, or did your family speak about the fact that you were ethnically Okinawan, and you drew a distinction between the local Okinawans and the local Japanese Americans?
Absolutely, because there's an Okinawan festival in Hawaii every year. And there's Okinawan donuts. There's a whole bunch of, there's Okinawan dancing, and there's different things. Like my grandfather, he played the samasang, which is this snakeskin sort of Japanese banjo. And he used to play for some of the festivities. And my mother, I don't know, this falls to the youngest girl. She was the one who did the dancing for that. Yeah, I went to Japanese school for 5 years with Elna Oishi and Kimi Sakuda.
How's your Japanese?
Not that great. I mean, I can read. Well, actually, I don't think I'll ever forget the hiragana alphabet, because we used to have to recite it every single day. Like, we used to have to say it. Notwithstanding, if you were late, you still had to get up and say it before you sat down. But I could understand more than I could talk, because it's just my vocabulary is not very big, but I could understand my grandparents.
How did your parents meet?
So they met at Queen's Hospital. My mother was a nurse. I don't believe my grandparents in Hawaii went to the wedding. So my dad was a doctor there, and my mom was a nurse, and she was at Queen's Nursing because she couldn't go to the mainland. But apparently, she decided to marry a white person, unlike anybody else in her family, which was kind of one of those things that you didn't do right then. But then I guess she decided to do it. I guess my parents decided to do it, and it was okay by them.
So the fact that your grandparents on the Okinawan side did not attend the wedding suggests that they disapproved. Did you hear evidence of that as you were growing up?
Oh, they would just talk about him in front of his face in Japanese.
What would they say?
Oh. We'd be at their house, and my grandfather, whom I actually really disliked, I actually thought he was a complete jerk, because he would expect me to clean the table immediately after everybody was done, if we're there. And if one of my brothers took their own plate to the sink, they got incredible high praise. But if I didn't immediately get up and start clearing off the table, I got yelled at in Japanese. But aside from that, he would say stuff like, "Oh, look at this, my lazy son-in-law. He comes to my house and he doesn't even mow my lawn." Stuff like that.
So your parents, your father was from Austria, your mother was, from Hawaii, but had grown up in the Okinawan community. What kind of a home did they create for you and your siblings?
Well, I guess it was like mixed with like both of that stuff. Like, I mean, we had the influence of, the Japanese stuff, because it's actually, there's more Japanese stuff around than say Austrian things in Hawaii. But there was an actual Austrian community because, like there's an Austrian society. We used to go to this dinner every year with the Austrian consulate. But yeah, there are a bunch of Austrians in Hawaii.
And so was there anything about the way you were raised or just things that happened in your house that you can identify as definitely Austrian or definitely kind of from that tradition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd have Stollen every Christmas, and my dad would give Stollens to all of his like referring doctors and friends and whatever. And my brothers and I, like when we were old enough to drive, could make money delivering them for him.
Did you grow up religious?
Well, let's see. We started off Catholic, and then my parents decided to become born again Christians. And we went to probably like, let's see, a whole bunch of different churches. We went to, I don't know, Four Corners, like a whole bunch of different ones. And some of it was a little frightening, I guess, for kids. Just like some of these Texan people who'd come over to the First Assembly of God services with this whole slain in the spirit stuff, and like adults, professional adults talking in tongues, very, very, very odd for kids anyway. I actually found it to be kind of chaotic. So I actually got confirmed as a Catholic when I went to college.
Feels like you've taken several journeys of the mind. I mean, you had these two different cultures which you had to navigate. You went through at least a couple of different religious beliefs. Is that something you feel comfortable with? Was it difficult transitioning from one, I guess, system of beliefs to another?
Well, I don't know if it's transitioning. It's more like, I think we're all unique people, right? We all make our own choices. And I think there's always room for compromise. And even if the doctrines themselves don't provide for it, people can be people and can be realistic about what they want and can do and what they believe and who, what's true for them, what's authentic for them.
Tell me if this is a leading question or not. Did you get interested in music? Did you get into music because of your exposure to religion? Because in church you sing and there's a demand for playing instruments. Is that how you became musical?
Not originally. I mean, I've always sung, like from an early age. I've always sung, and I've always been able to hear tunes and then repeat them, and have tunes in my head. So I've been singing a really long time. I used to sing a lot at Faith Fellowship, and I learned a lot from the entertainers that came to the church. And actually, I was Miss Teen of Hawaii in 1987. And I did a lot of performing because of that role, because I happened to be somebody who sang. And so I would sing for fun runs and for, I don't know, for some Just Say No campaign. And I was also on the schedule for singing for the offertory at church. So church did play a role in some of my singing. And before that, I also got solos a bunch of times in some of the kids' productions at the First Assembly of God, where Janet Barber, who was from the South and had all these big musical productions. Actually, one of the times I got a solo and I was singing at the Blaisdell Center, which was kind of cool for their huge like Christmas service, which was really neat. And so Miss Teen of America, which ultimately they ended up going bankrupt sometime in the 90s, but like at the time there were those two pageants, and the Miss Teen of America pageant was something that somebody I was in chorale with thought I would be good at, and honestly I didn't expect to win. And it was people from other islands too. I didn't even expect that. I thought it was like, I don't know, something a little bit more, I don't know what I was thinking. I've never been in one before. And then when I went to the national pageant, I couldn't, like, there were people who had been doing pageants since they were 5. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I was so green. And I was also the shortest person there.
How old were you when you went to compete in Miss Teen of America?
I was 17. There were only five teens of color. I hadn't thought about it then, but I think about it now. Like, it didn't even cross my mind to think about that. But there were 2 Black, 2 Asian, and 1 Hispanic. And the person who won was 5'8" and had dark blonde hair and blue eyes, just like the one who had won the year before. In fact, there was a picture of them and they look like sisters at the end of the whole thing. But like, it didn't even cross my mind to think about it until later. I was just looking at some pictures and I'm like, oh my God, look at that.
What did your parents think about you competing in and winning Miss Teen of Hawaii?
Oh, they thought it was pretty novel. They were psyched, of course, but it was definitely novel.
So what was it like growing up in Hawaii in the 70s? Do you have any memories that are like definitely Hawaii, definitely the 70s, that perhaps people would find interesting and be able to contrast with our current era?
Growing up in the 70s, well, I mean, we didn't necessarily wear shoes and we didn't have to, and the schools didn't make us, which I thought was kind of, I mean, it's something I took for granted. And then we got to 7th grade and we had to wear shoes. It was part of the dress code. And it was like, oh my gosh. And of course, my kids now, when I tell them that, they just can't believe it, because you wouldn't do that in New England. And even up to high school, we were allowed to run cross-country meets with taped feet if it was muddy. And actually, it was better to run with taped feet depending on the terrain. For instance, my senior year, it was the cross-country states was at the Mauna Kea resort on the Big Island, and part of it was on sand. It was like a stretch on the sand, and that's much easier to run in barefoot than it is with running shoes.
When you were kind of going around town and around Hawaii with your parents, was it kind of clear that your mom was the local and your dad was the haole from, somewhere else?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it was more clear when in the 70s when my brothers were playing like baseball at the Aina field, and like my dad would come pick up like my brothers, and he would try to be friendly to like the local coaches. And they kind of regarded him as sort of like nice but odd, but they put up with him more than other haoles because he was foreign, I think.
So you went to Punahou all 13 years, from kindergarten through graduation in 1988. How did you end up in Punahou in kindergarten?
I have no idea. I think my mother talked to some people, and I went to Waiakeola, which was a feeder for Punahou. So,
do you have any special memories of any of that time leading up to high school? Anything that you especially cherish?
oh yeah, the banyan tree was awesome. That was like the most fun thing on the playground. Barwick, yeah, the Barwick Field playground. The banyan tree right there. Occasionally people would fall out of the tree and like break an arm, but it wasn't really a big deal.
How do you think you fit in socially once you got into high school at Punahou?
How did I fit in socially? I would say this. I had various groups that I fit into, but I was like the only common denominator in a whole bunch of groups. I was in the chorale. So I went to New Zealand with the chorale and I was part of that group, but I was also a runner. I was in cross country and track, and I was a long distance runner. So I hung out with all these runners a lot of time. I mean, we spent a lot of time running. If you're a long distance runner, that's what you do. And so I had all these friends who didn't do music. I was sort of, I guess, laterally part of these different groups. And then I was friends with some of the theater people, but I wasn't in theater because you can't do theater if you do sports, because you can't make the practices. And then like there was the group that hung out, as you know, since you were there, in the journalism room. So like there were these different groups that I kind of would like walk between. If I just was friends with all these different individuals from different groups. So as far as fitting in, I don't know if that's called fitting in. It's sort of just having friends in different groups.
And you had a pretty diverse set of activities. You were singing, you were running. Was there one that sort of rose above the rest that you were truly passionate about, or did you really savor having that diversity of experiences?
Yeah, I kind of like it all, because I think it all feeds into each other, and I don't really feel like I'm completely authentic without all of them. I mean,
were you going to high school parties and things like that? Was that your scene? Did you dabble in that?
Well, I mean, there are parties, but like what parties do you go to? It depends on your group. Like, yes, I would go to some chorale parties. Yes, yes, I would go to cross-country parties, these great parties on the beach, which were awesome with the nice fire and everything. And track parties too. And, I mean, there were those, and I would go to them, but, I wasn't like the last person there or anything.
And you felt comfortable in those situations? You didn't feel like, I don't know whether there was a divide between your religious self and then how you felt you should be acting in social situations.
Well, I don't know that, you need to be telling people what to do. It's about like what you do. Just because if people are doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, doesn't mean you have to leave. Just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean that, like, I tell people not to do drugs if they're doing it near me. I just, don't do it myself, and try not to be in a place where I, would be considered a facilitator.
Well, that is a very good approach. Not everybody has that when they're a teenager. What they often feel like is either I need to act like these peers of mine, or they might not, think highly of me, or I might not fit in. But it sounds like you were completely comfortable in your own skin. And
what teenager is completely comfortable? I don't know about that. It's more,
no more leading questions. No more leading questions.
I mean, I'm not, I don't think I was comfortable. It's just that, I would try to do whatever, whatever seemed appropriate, but not to make other people uncomfortable, because that's not nice, right?
Do you recall any classes or topics or even teachers where you kind of felt like, wow, this is something I want to learn a lot more about?
Well, I really did enjoy journalism writing. I enjoyed advanced writing with Liz Foster, and you and I were in the same feedback group. And I really liked the exercises she gave us, and how she really encouraged us to exercise our brains, think about different ways to stimulate our creative juices, and also to rein them in sometimes. And I thought that was that was helpful, alongside the critical writing that we had to do for, say, European studies, or with respect to journalism, if you're going to be writing at least an article a week, being on the staff, like, or being an editor, you have to write about facts, and you need to learn how to do a good lead, and you need to be tight and succinct and do all these things and not be flowery, which sometimes you can do when you're not writing journalistically, as you know, and you don't have like a style book that you have to follow. And sometimes it's good to do that, because then, ideas that you would have maybe held back come out, and then you can prune them later.
I take it back. I do have another leading question for you. It seems to me like after you left Hawaii, you developed some insights about perhaps yourself, about diversity, fitting in, that became quite valuable. And now, you as an adult are an advocate for some of these ideas. Is that the case? Do you feel like you discover things about yourself and about perhaps growing up in Hawaii after you left?
Absolutely. You always have perspective. It's 200% accurate if you're looking back, right? Because it's looking back. It's not something that you're doing in the moment. You're not making a judgment call in the moment. And yeah, I absolutely have like a completely different perspective of what I experienced, in the present at the time I was in high school. And I guess if you want to look at it this way, maybe I just felt like I was a misfit the entire time. And that was the whole thing. I was just trying to fit in, even though I was a misfit, because I didn't fit into any one group, but I kind of was like, sort of part of this group and part of that group, and I kind of needed to put that together when I had some perspective, which is, far away, like on the East Coast, as opposed to being in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I will say a lot of times I've run into somebody I haven't seen in a while, and they say, oh my gosh, talking with you, it's exactly like it was years ago. It's like you're the same person, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but apparently there is some consistency in whether it's my misfitness or whatever it is that came from way back.
In what ways has your misfitness been sort of like an advantage or a superpower, do you think, in your adult life?
Superpower advantage. Well, I don't know if it's a superpower, but I don't know if it's an advantage, but it does make me, well, So having two cultures, and being raised that way and being sort of in this, like, am I a jock? Am I an artist? Where am I? Am I just a plain nerd? Am I a misfit nerd? All that stuff, you know, I, I, I really don't know what labels they fall under, but what it does is it causes, well, it it kind of causes me to be curious, because I feel like, everybody's got a whole bunch of facets. And so, it's not just me. And so it's nice to find that stuff out about other people. And it's nice to, focus on the uniqueness of all of the people around you, because that's generally what I try to do in my diversity, and inclusion and belonging trainings, is that, this is not just for people who are of color, people who are LGBTQ, people who are part of affinity groups. This is about every single person. Every person is a human being and has different facets, which sometimes show themselves more than others. And, really it's up to us to learn about them and see how they can instruct us about how to be, and about stuff that we don't know.
Were both of your parents quite curious people?
Yes. Yeah. They're kind of curious, inquisitive adventurers, I guess.
You're a lawyer, but you continue to write. You write music, you perform. So you've kept that diversity of interests with you, and they probably give you quite a lot of happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but it wasn't always that way, because you don't know, when you're in law school, some of law school, what they do is they try to push you to be a stereotype, because you need to get a job, and in order to get a job at a firm, you need to be what they view as an associate from their firm would be like. And people would say, you get this vibe from the lobby, and if you fit, you might have a chance. But anyway, so like, I actually didn't start off still continuing to do music and writing when I got out of law school. I thought I kind of had to concentrate on being a lawyer, because I didn't know anything about that, because I'm a first generation lawyer. There are no lawyers still in my family. I went out to an open mic, and I remember the first one, our neighbors came, and my husband came, and like it, because I was, I'd never just done that. And it was really fun. I kind of remembered, oh my God, I like performing like this. And I hadn't been thinking of trial practice and motion hearings and these sorts of things as performance. Oddly, right during that time, exponentially, my oral argument skills got tons better. Like, it was so easy. I stopped, like, I was sometimes would stutter because I would get caught up in like how to say. I wasn't even doing that anymore. Suddenly it was like, I was just being myself, really, because the fact is, as I said before, I've been singing way longer than I've been doing anything else. And it's one of those things I've always known how to do. So once I got back to that, it felt like, oh, I just needed to go back to being myself. I didn't need to be acting like other people for that purpose, because I didn't have any lawyer role models that were like me or looked like me. I felt like I had to do that. But ultimately, that's kind of really what caused me to make the connection. We're all patchworks, right? We've got all these different experiences, and it kind of gets woven together to make us what we are.